that was a lesson that I personally learned because I chose to let go of control over other people and things and instead turn that around and look at the journey I was having and look at where can I improve and where can I do better. And so for me, this was just a really powerful lesson in my life as I worked with my Mustang.
There are healers on this planet with the power to soften the suffering of mankind, yet they have remained in the recesses of the world, abused, discarded, and labeled as trash. This is The Touch of a Mustang. I am your host, Shalise Clough, and I'm here to tell the story of wild horses, Mustangs, and the humans who are discovering and sharing their gifts while working to protect their well-being and preserve their spirit so this divine power won't be lost. Join us on this quest with the Wild Mustang.
Welcome back to The Touch of a Mustang. I am so grateful to have you guys here to talk about horses and to talk about how they can help us to live better lives, to teach us lessons we need for our life. And that's really what I want to talk about today. And so today I am going to talk about how powerful it can be in our lives to be able to let go of things that we don't have control over. And this is a concept that I think I probably always knew. It was not a new concept, but it's actually a very difficult one, I think, to implement in your life. And for me, it was very difficult to bring it into my life, but also it was an incredibly important part for me to live a healthy life. So it's a topic I really wanted to talk about right now because I know there's a lot going on in the world, and I have seen a lot of videos and talk about how devastated people are. It is a couple days after the election, and obviously not everybody wants the same candidate. And people have different things that they believe in and different policies that they believe are most important. And so I do think that something like an election that we are so privileged to have in this country and the way that we have it is something that is very significant in our life. And I don't mean to downplay that at all, but I have seen videos of people who are in total despair because of the outcome. The problem with it is when, and this is just one very in-your-face example right now, but the problem is when we take something that we don't have control over. So in this example, we each had the opportunity, if we were registered, to vote for the policies and the people that we thought were best. And that's where our realm of control existed. And now the election's taken place and we don't have control beyond that. I've seen these people just be devastated about it. And, I get it because I have also been devastated about things that are outside of my control. And because I get it is why I really want to talk about this idea and just how powerful it can be in our lives when we let go of the things we don't have control of and then really focus on where we do have control. So anyone who has listened much to the podcast knows that in my background, I've had some difficult things that I personally struggled with. My husband struggled with mental health for several years. I've had teenagers who have made some pretty challenging decisions, and thankfully I have some time out from those experiences, but I can tell you that in the moment I was absolutely devastated by them. And the reason I was so devastated is one, because there were things that were very, very important to me, things that I based my life around. And in doing so, I had hoped and desired and really expected a particular outcome. And I think our choices do lead to our outcomes. So that's something important to remember. But these were not the outcomes that I was expecting. I never expected to have some of the challenges that I had, and I never expected my children to make some of the choices they made. And I really allowed myself to become devastated by it. Now, as I look back in retrospect, they were actually very good things because they did force in me change to adjust to the situation and personal reflection to really determine, where do I stand? What is my place in this? And what can I do moving forward? Other people is one of the places that we long for control. That's probably not popular to say. I don't know that most of us would like to admit that. But I think if we can be honest with ourselves, there are a lot of times that we really would appreciate the opportunity to control someone else and the decisions they're making and have them do the things that we thought would be best. And it's just not the reality of life. So, the time when I was really learning this lesson for myself and not just learning the concept, but really learning how to implement it in my life was also nearly directly after I got my first Mustang. I grew up and remember I was a young girl. So I think this isn't actually a bad way to teach someone, especially like a young girl who's not very strong, to interact with a horse. But it was like, you need to be the boss, you need to tell them where to go. And now I think we would use that same concept and say you need to be a leader. And obviously, with a young girl, it was kind of like you need to use like all the strength you have to get your horse to turn the way you want them to, or something like that. So it really wasn't that I rode horses and just had all these mechanisms for control. It was that, I need to use my strength to serve as a leader for my horse. But the concept that was put in my head was that you need to be in control of a horse when you are around them. And, this is a safety issue. I do think that we need to have some essence of control and leadership when we're with horses, hands down. I think that is an important concept. The problem is that we can take a good concept and we can apply it in ways that aren't beneficial, both to us and to other people. And so I went in with this Mustang who was newly integrating into this domestic world. And I thought, that's the first step I need to take, is I need to establish control. And I learned really quickly that I didn't know very much about training horses, especially not about training Mustangs who were not used to our human world. And so it caused me to really reflect upon that. And it would be with simple things like I would take her out for a walk. And I do think that there are people who are strong enough and people who have enough mechanisms to control a horse independent of how the horse feels. I think we see that all the time. For me, I did not use a lot of mechanisms of control, and nor was I strong enough to just kind of stop explosions on my own. And looking back, I don't think that's the best approach anyway. So again, it was really a teaching, learning opportunity for me. So we would just, it would start on the ground where we would walk, and she was nervous, and I was not picking up on those signs and those indications in advance, and she would just explode. And then I became terrified. Anyway, it began this long process. And in this process, I began getting really frustrated because I really just wanted to be like, you're totally fine. Just do what I ask you to do. I just wanted to be in control. Starting out on this journey, both personally and in my horsemanship, I was not exceptionally teachable, I wouldn't say. I wanted things to be done my way. And I guess I would say I was teachable in a way because I would go and look at outside resources, but I wasn't necessarily willing to learn from the horse that was in front of me at first. And So I would try all these strategies I would see a lot of traditional trainers use on their horses, and whether it was the way I was implementing them or my emotional state or my physical strength, they were not working for me. And so I had to really step back and look at what I was going to do. And so the best way I can really visualize this is like I would take my Mustang out of the corral, and because I was scared and I was reacting out of fear, I would hold on to her lead really tight. And we see that a lot. People really holding on tight to their lead so they can keep the horse where they want them. And she, of course, was not used to a world in where that was the norm. She was used to doing her own thing, to protecting herself in her own way and going the places she wanted to go when she wanted to go. That's how wild horses live. And here I was holding so tightly to this lead. And so, of course, you can imagine that for her, it probably felt like she was trapped, like she was not safe because she didn't have the ability to go where she wanted to go and do what she wanted to do. And gradually, after I tried this approach repeatedly and it wasn't working, and I was frazzled emotionally and mentally, that, what was I thinking getting this Mustang with all these young kids who depended on me for survival, and really reached points of giving up. And it wasn't until I started to learn to let go of control that things improved for us. And, it wasn't a situation where it was, I'm just going to let you do what you want and you kick me in the face. Okay, that's fine. And I think we have to be careful because I think it can turn into that. And speaking on a relationship perspective, we can get to a point where we are boundaryless. And because of that, because we let go of not just control of others, but also control in the realms where we do actually have control and need to have control, we can let go of that and allow other people to injure us. So one thing I think a lot is life would be so much easier if it was just really black or white. Either let go of all control or be controlling all the time type of thing. And I think about this with so many different areas, how it would be so much easier. But the simple reality is that the best way to live is often a balance in the middle between two extremes. And so when I say I let go of control, it wasn't that just all behavior was now acceptable. And I think this is an ideology that we've fallen into some, that all behavior is acceptable, whether that's with our kids or with our horses or with our relationships. That also is unhealthy. But the thing that is important is finding this middle ground between I want to have control over you. I want you to do what I say and react how I think is right, versus these are the areas where I have control and this is where I will take control. And if you react in this way, then I will respond in this way. And the idea is really putting all that focus and energy into the areas where we are responsible and where we are capable of having control. A lot of the things we try to control, like the election, for just a recent example, so much time and energy can be put into being upset and sad about that, and it doesn't change anything except for putting us in a very bad mental state, which I certainly got to when I was struggling so much in my personal situations. So simultaneously between my personal life and as I was working with my Mustang, I was really wrestling with this concept of where do I have control? Where do I put up boundaries? What behavior is and isn't acceptable? And I can make it sound really simple while I talk about it, but it was a very long process for me. And I would even say a continual process of really analyzing, what is within my realm of control? What should I be working and focusing on, and where are the areas that I need to let go? When we are able to do that, it gives us so much more power and ability to impact our mental and emotional state in positive ways. Because just like, some of the, to me, very dramatic recordings, I never would have recorded myself in my dark moments personally. But, we put all this energy into staying in and being committed to despair. And even think sometimes if people see how sad I am, how upset I am, maybe they will change. And don't get me wrong, we do influence other people. People might change because they see you in that state. But if they do, that's not going to be a healthy relationship change, because it will be a change that they made out of fear, that they made a change fearful of you staying in that space. So as I worked with Sylvanie, I would really start to recognize areas where I can let go of control, and also to start work on areas where we were in a good place already. I wanted to rush, and to meet these deadlines and these expectations that I had set for myself. And they really just weren't realistic with my knowledge base at that time, and with her reactions to the world and the type of horse that she was. And so I had to step back. I had to relinquish a lot of control and be open to her telling me, like, this is where I'm at. And that's something that would then help me in my personal life. And looking back, I think I could have actually allowed it to help me a lot more. But it did help me most particularly to understand people are going to be able to choose however they want to choose. And yes, I can have some influence over that, but also it's their life to live. And so I can do what I think is good and right, and I can react in the ways that I think are best, but that doesn't guarantee any outcome. So there were two particular instances in my personal life that really highlighted this for me. And one was when my 17-and-a-half-year-old daughter left home. And it was for sure a process for me in the parenting journey to move from places where you have great control when your kids are babies and toddlers and you can pick them up and put them wherever you want, into a space where these children are desperately trying to find the balance between childhood and adulthood, and where it needed to turn more into a guide. Now, I still would not have advocated for the way that she did things, and I can certainly see mistakes on my side. But one of the biggest things that I would have done at that time was to be more aware. And the thing is, a lot of times we hang on to things so tightly because we want control so badly. And a lot of that control, I believe, is based on these deep fears that we have of what might happen. And so we are living in this world we have created in our mind that doesn't exist. And we are desperately trying to alter this world that doesn't exist, that we've created out of fear, and to change it into something that we think should be different. And for me, it was really important that I took a step back and started to focus more on myself and where I had the ability to control things. And the biggest piece of that was letting go of the things I couldn't control. One of those big things being the behavior and choices of other people. And as I was able to gradually let go of control, things improved. And the first place that they improved was in my mental space. When I could step back and say, yes, these are the things that I think these other people should be doing. They're not. And I probably even told them this is what I thought they should be doing. They're not doing that. I can't make them do that. This was often dealing with people who, were grown, their own people. It was not with young children. And so the big thing that was so helpful for me was to realize like you need to loosen control, you need to let go, and you need to focus on yourself, on your realm of responsibility. And so this would translate into horsemanship where I wasn't reacting so much out of fear. I was able to have some awareness of, where Sylvanie, my Mustang, was out at and how she was feeling with the experiences that were new and strange to her. And this really began my journey into seeing horses in a different way. I've always loved horses. I think a lot of us that love horses, there's something just within our soul that attracts us to them, that pulls us to them. And I certainly felt that. But even in all that love and closeness I felt with horses, I still wanted control. I still, in a way, wanted them to be a machine that served me instead of it being a reciprocal back and forth relationship where we give to each other. And so in the horsemanship journey, I began to start letting go, one, of expectations, how I thought it should all play out. And I really started focusing on consistency for myself. I would set just the smallest goals for ourselves each day, a place that I knew that we could achieve, very achievable and just outside our level of comfort. Instead of thinking, I need to be riding her in 30, 60, or 90 days, or I need to have her out on the trails, or if I know what I'm doing, then we would be at this point, rather than allowing it to be a learning journey and experience. And I think that's a mistake that we often make is we get so focused on this endpoint that we forget to enjoy and learn in the moments where we are right now. And that's exactly what I was doing. And it was also exactly what I was doing in my personal life where I thought things should be a certain way. I had even done the work I felt for a particular outcome to play out, for my kids to behave a certain way, and for them to have certain things be important to them, and for our family life to be a certain way. And what I didn't account for is all the other feelings and emotions of everybody else involved in this, that it was not mine to make all that. And so I would get so focused on it was supposed to be this way and it's not, and just be devastated because of it. I've mentioned those TikTok videos, and I can't say that there weren't moments where I didn't just have terrible breakdowns, just full in sorrow and despair because things were not going the way that I thought that they should go. When it was not just me this was affecting, these were experiences that impacted and involved a lot of other people. And so instead of, stepping into that journey and enjoying that experience and learning from it, seeing what I could learn and how I could grow in these times, and really focusing on where I could change to have the outcomes in my life that I wanted. And I do believe that's a place where we do have control and we do have responsibility, is in our personal experience. And instead of doing that, I would just fall into despair to the point where it definitely became really unhealthy. And I think it's fair to acknowledge when things don't go our way, we are going to have an emotional response, and to not just acknowledge it, but to be okay with that. We are all people trying to learn about this world, and that process isn't always easy. It can be really, really, really hard to let go of the things we expected and the things that we hoped for. That is a difficult process, and I don't want to downplay that at all. I believe it's something that we need to go through and something we need to work through. Has been my personal experience. I don't think we can just be like, okay, well, my whole life fell apart as I thought it was going to be, and whatever, I'm just going on with my day. I think that there is a place for real sorrow and mourning in our life in whatever capacity that might take for each of us. The problem is when we allow that to take over our lives and when we relinquish all control and give away the opportunities that we have to take the experience and to learn from it and to grow from it. And I can tell you there's a lot of people who have had really devastating experiences, ones that I don't know that I would be able to cope with well. And so, in saying all this, I in no way think that letting go of our expectations, letting go of control, and letting go of fear of what we don't want to happen is in any way an easy thing. I think it's a really difficult path to walk. But in the end, if we can learn to do that, it is the better, healthier path because we can move forward in life and enter into this present time that we are in, even if it's much different than we expected, and we can still enjoy it. And yeah, I think that's true even when really hard things come. And I can tell you 100%, my life now is nothing like I envisioned it. But I do think that it is because I was able to let go of some, and not some, a lot of expectations I had, and be okay with it being different and accept that, this world I created in my head was never a reality. It was something I wanted and it's something I worked for. And in a lot of ways, all of that has come to pass. A lot of the things that I hoped and longed for. My daughter, who we had such a hard time when she was 17, just got married to a great guy and is doing absolutely fantastic in life. And I can tell you when we were really going through our struggles, that was something I was really functioning out of fear of, that she was going to create a lot of difficulties for herself in her life. That certainly could have been a possibility. It's not the possibility. So it wasn't something that I needed to mourn and to be upset about at that time. What I really needed to do was to focus on myself, and not in a it's all about me type of way, but in a where can I learn and grow? Where might this path take me? And I think that also goes along with our horsemanship, where we can be really stuck in these expectations we see. We can see other people's life with their horses and think, that's what I want and that's what I deserve. A lot of times we feel like we deserve something we haven't worked for. I will say that with my Mustang, I felt like I deserved a different outcome at the time. Looking back, I can 100% see like there were so many things that I needed to learn and grow, and it has really changed my perspective to where now I want to learn and grow. I want to find ways to make things better, and I can see areas where, okay, I've done good in this area, but there's this other area that I really want to improve and do better in. And I think that's one of the coolest things about learning to let go of control and to stop living out of fear of what might happen, is that we can really change our entire mindset to where we look at the moment we're in and the realm of control that we do have, and live, instead of out of fear, live out of seeking knowledge and seeking to understand things better. And so this idea of letting go was just that for me. It was the chance for me to learn. And at first, I really put, when a lot of just severe life struggles for me unfolded, I really put a lot of blame onto other people. And as I learned this concept of letting go and of it's not my responsibility to pick how these other people are living their life, I began to see things within myself that were not great. They weren't the way that I wanted to live. It wasn't how I wanted to be in the world. And, we can go into a lot of things that kind of made me that way. For me, like a very big one was being a people pleaser. And I thought, if I'm so kind to other people, if I do so much for other people, then they owe me. And I don't know if a lot of people who are people pleasers would say that. And really, I don't even know if I've said that before, but we kind of do stuff with good intentions, but also with this idea that they owe us, and it then leaves us in a place of resentment. And so for me, overcoming and still overcoming, I am by no means great at it. I have to be really, really conscious about it, about doing things because I think it's the best and not because there's maybe outside pressures or pressures from other people that are telling me, like, this is what I want. This is what you should do for me. As a mom, it's something that developed where you really want your kids to be happy. You want them to have a good life. And so we can sometimes think, this really isn't best, but they're begging me for it. And so I'm just going to give it to them. And I think that same analogy can be taken to other relationships where people beg us to be a certain way. And even if we don't necessarily feel like it's best, we maybe do that because we want to be kind. We've been taught to be kind and to look out for other people, and it's certainly good principles, but not at the expense of ourselves. And so for me, by letting go, I was able to kind of, I could let go of other people and what they should be. And I was able to pick up on, you're not doing everything right either. There are things that you have done to contribute to this situation and the way that it is now. And I can tell you that those changes were, and even sometimes still are, painful to go from these places where I thought, I am being so good and kind and giving up so much for other people, even if they didn't ask me to, and they can't do the smallest thing in return for me, or what do they have to complain about? And realizing that's not always what's most beneficial for other people that we interact with. And I'm speaking to people pleasers, we need to do the things that are good for ourselves as well. There's this quote from John Deloney, who is a therapist that you can find a lot online. And he says, choose guilt over resentment. And that just totally epitomizes how I was living, as I was living choosing resentment all the time. I'll do this for you, and then being so angry when I didn't get what I wanted in return. And often I would choose that because I didn't like the feeling of guilt. I would choose resentment instead of guilt. Instead of having to feel guilty that I told someone no, or that I did something I needed to do instead of what they wanted me to do, I would feel so much guilt. And it's still something that I really struggle with. And so I would avoid that guilt. I would do the thing that people told me to do, or I felt like they wanted me to do. And I would end up in this place of deep resentment. And that was just a lesson that I personally learned for myself, because I chose to let go of control over other people and things, and instead turn that around and look at the journey I was having and look at where can I improve and where can I do better. And so for me, this was just a really powerful lesson in my life as I worked with my Mustang and realized, I can give her a little more control. I can help her govern herself. And I think it was a principle that I learned from Warwick Schiller. And he said, this is totally paraphrasing, but you don't want to have to be in control of your horse all the time. You want your horse to be in control of themselves. You want them to be in a space where they feel okay so that they can behave okay. You don't want a horse that is doing what you're telling it to, but they are so terrified or uncomfortable that at any moment they could explode. You want that horse that knows like they are safe, they're okay, you are aware of how they're feeling, and you'll work together to keep each other safe. We obviously can't always know how our horse is feeling and how they experience things. One thing I thought was so funny when I started training my Mustang is she freaked out when some grass touched her stomach. And I'm thinking, you're a wild horse. Certainly grass has touched your stomach before. But it wasn't the grass that touched her stomach that made her explode, because I specifically remember this one time when that happened. It wasn't the grass that made her explode. It was all the other things. And then that just one thing on top of it just made it to where she could not maintain control anymore. Like her fight or flight instinct kicked in and she needed to react to that. And so I think that's also true of our relationships, is we don't want relationships, whether it's with our horses or with the people in our lives, where they are doing the things that we want because we are controlling them. I don't think that's anything that most of us would aspire to in a relationship, is like, I want to be a dictator and control what other people do. I think we want people to be a certain way. I do think we want certain things out of people, certain things out of our horses. But if we can step back and say, I no longer am so focused on what I want. I am more focused on wanting this relationship with you, wanting this experience and opportunity to grow with you. I think that changes everything in both how we interact with the people around us and with our horses. And I think it also changes how we interact with the world. There are always going to be a lot of things that are not within our control. And I would say most things are outside our control. But there are some really important things we have control of, and that is our thoughts, the way we think about the world, and the stories we tell ourselves, the way we explain what has happened to us. We have control over that. We can develop really unhealthy stories. For me, an unhealthy story I developed was, that I was the cause of other people's problems. And that's simply not true. None of us have that level of control to affect people's outcomes and their lives to that degree. In the world that we live in today. So the stories we tell ourselves are something that we can change. We can choose to change the way that we look and think about not only other people, and I would say especially the place we need to start is with ourselves. The story that we tell ourselves about who we are and what our experiences mean. We can be pretty cruel to ourselves. So that's one area we have control and that we can change, is the way that we talk about and to ourselves, the stories we tell ourselves about what has happened. And the other thing is the behavior that we engage in, the way that we respond to the outside world. We can be a people pleaser and we can see that something is wanted from us, and we can still choose to say, no, because I need something different right now. And we can learn to choose guilt over resentment. That's something that I definitely learned the power of. That language helps me to understand what I'm doing. And now that I understand that and that I could, let go of what other people needed, it's really easy for us to see, other people should do this. They should change this. They should do that. It's really easy to control a world that we have no stake in, but it's really hard to change one that we are so enmeshed in, that we have developed these patterns over time and with our engagement in the world. And that is really hard to change. But that's why it's also so important that we stop looking at other people and what we think we can control with them. And we look at ourselves and think, okay, I can change my response to this. My horse is exploding and I'm tightening my grip on her and trying to hold her in. I can change my response to be, I can see that you're super uncomfortable. I'm going to get off of you and we're going to take a moment here and we're just going to both, breathe for a little bit and calm down, and let's get out of our fight or flight response. We have incredible power when we can step back and see how we can affect things for better, not from a place of control and fear. When we're gripping really tight on the reins, that's out of fear. When we can let go and say, yeah, I was planning on going for a ride with you today, but clearly you're not comfortable with it. I'm going to change my plans. I'm going to get off. We're going to go on a walk instead. That's something I never would have imagined myself doing when I first got my horse. And now it's something we do all the time. Just the other day, my daughter and I went into the forest and it had snowed. And we've never really done snow rides before, but it's a different experience out in the forest. There's snow falling constantly. We were going through just trees that were leaning over covered with snow. We were all soaking wet. It was a really good ride. It was a good learning experience. It was not it was not comfortable and relaxing. But, during that ride there were a lot of areas. It's very up and down mountains, and we hadn't ridden it in the snow. You can't see your footing. So there were a lot of areas where I got off and I walked and I led the way and kind of felt out the path before everybody else went down it. And I could choose to see that as a failure, that I should have been able to control my horse. We should have been able to do that. They've walked that mountain before. It's just a little snow. Or I can turn that around and just say, okay, we have more learning to do before we can make this exactly how I envisioned it when we first left. And I've actually been able, which has been so powerful for me, to let go of a lot of the expectations that I have of how things will play out and how other people will choose, and to really turn those expectations more into the present moment of, now when I go out on a ride, number one main expectation is that we'll get to spend time with horses and have a safe ride or walk. There's been many walks or times where I walked one horse and my kids have ridden another horse, because it was important for me for that experience to be not the, look at me, I'm such a great horse trainer, because I would probably never qualify myself in that way. I still have so much to learn. But instead to say, okay, I have this really simple goal. And with horses, maybe that's a safe ride. With our relationships, maybe it's a really simple goal to enjoy the afternoon together with someone that we have time to spend it with. And in doing that, and I think what that is really doing is focusing on the foundation of what we really do want. Don't we really want good relationships more than we want a relationship that plays out exactly how we think it should? And if we can focus on that really better foundational thing, to have a safe ride versus being able to go on this new trail with no problems. If we change that expectation, and if we let go of the fear that we might associate with failing to meet that expectation, that's a fear that a lot of us carry, even though we might not vocalize it in that way, that we are scared of not meeting the expectations that either we have for ourselves or other people do. When we can let go of that and really focus in on where we are right now and what we can learn right now, it can really transform our world. And I know for me, just being able to let go and see that, I think other people should change stuff. Everybody has room for improvement. And again, it's really easy to look at where other people have room for improvement. To change that, let go of that. Okay, they could improve in that way, but that's up to them. And instead focus on, okay, here is a place where I need to really change. Here's a place where I'm really struggling, and again, people pleasing has been a huge one for me, where I honestly would just bend over backwards for what I thought other people needed or what I felt like I was supposed to do, how things were supposed to look. And I would ignore all the signs that were not healthy for me and really contributing to relationship problems that it would have been much easier for me to stay in denial of and to put that blame and that responsibility on someone else. But that didn't do any good. It was only when I was able to let go of things outside my realm of responsibility and my realm of control and focus back in on myself And those 3 places where I can make changes, which is the stories I tell myself, the thoughts that I have, which then affect my emotions, the responses and my behavior, the way I interact with the world. And I will say the other one that we can change is our environment, the environments we choose to put ourselves in. Maybe we don't have great relationships, and maybe those are relationships we need to not participate in anymore, or we maybe need to monitor how we're feeling before we participate in those relationships, or we need to limit our interaction in different environments. And sometimes we might need to change our environment completely. But if we can become really clear on the areas where we have control, that can lend so much power to our life to make change within ourselves. And I can guarantee everybody ever on the earth, there are things that you can change for the better. And it's not instant. It's not easy. Like I said, with my people pleasing, it is constant. I still fall back into it. I can even identify when I'm falling back into it and still do it because it is such an automatic response for me to choose other people's happiness or needs over my own, and then to sit in my resentment or be angry with myself or unhappy with myself that that's what I did. So it's not easy, and it makes perfect sense why, rather than looking inward and the change we need to make, that we would deflect outward and put blame on other people, and not even just blame other people, but try and get them to change in the way that we think that they should, because that's so much easier than looking internally and changing these things that have been programmed really deeply within ourselves. But I promise you that this incredible power comes when we turn all that time and energy and focus inwardly and to those things that we can change. So try it and see what happens. And again, it's really hard and it's a really long process. But it's so much better when we can look at, these are the patterns I developed. This is the way I respond to the world. And here's how I can change. And it's not an easy process. It takes a lot of really conscious and concerted effort. We have to go against our automatic programming and try to be different in the world. But I have found for me, it has made such a huge world of difference into who I am, how I feel about myself, and even the relationships that I have and how they have played out. And even saying that, I can guarantee you I am on this journey. It's not one I've reached the end at. I am 100% in the middle of trying to find those things and focus on those things and remind myself, like, this is an area that is not my control. It's not my realm of responsibility. And to be able to let go of that and instead focus on those areas where it's like, okay, that's not, this is what I can work on right now. This is where my time and energy and focus can go. I hope that you guys might see the power of that principle, try it out in your life. And if you feel like this would be helpful to someone else, whether in their horsemanship or their personal life, and I really don't think we can disconnect those two, it really speaks to just what we need. I think that's why horses are so great. It's because I have found that really, really my horses have helped teach me the things that I need to alter in my human life and to change in that domain. And so if this would help someone, please pass that on to them. If you liked it, please subscribe, share it, hit a thumbs up. All of those things help us to spread this information. And if you know someone who would be great to be on the podcast, send them my way. We are always looking for people who are willing to open up and talk about their stories and share the things that they have learned, because I don't think that there's anything more powerful than seeing what has helped other people. And it's definitely impacted me, the people that have come on here and shared of themselves and the things that they've learned.
Thank you for joining us and learning about horses that heal and the humans who help them. We hope you'll continue with us on this journey. We'd love for you to subscribe on your favorite platform and follow The Touch of a Mustang on any of the major social media outlets. Please share with your friends, anyone who loves horses, or anyone who might be struggling and could benefit from this message. If you have felt the healing power of horses, or help them in their divinely appointed mission, please reach out. We want to hear your story. As we say goodbye, always remember that the horse is always there to help you heal.